We've got people from Western Australia, Tasmania. Bronwyn Hugh from Queensland is my co-presenter tonight. I know we've got Chris Wallace here also from Melbourne, who helped me, and she did the generic and the eventing courses. And we've got all, I think the other states also are represented, as well as we have some quite experienced stewards amongst us, as well as those keen to become jumping stewards. Now, to be a national steward, you have to first attend an Equestrian Australia course for stewards, which is the generic part, and then to be a jumping steward, do the jumping specific. And you complete a community officiating general principles course, which is run through the Australian Sports Commission. That's online at equestrian.org.au. You pass an open book online general generic and a jumping orbit test, and you successfully complete the shadow stewarding tasks that are listed in the workbook. So this is just a quick run through of what we covered in the generic course. Then when you've done all that, you are an accredited national steward, and you're also eligible for promotion to be an FEI level 1 jumping steward. We do need quite a few FEI stewards because at all the World Cup qualifiers and other FEI competitions that are held in Australia, we need 5 FEI stewards for each event. So, and also stewards are required in our jumping rules for any EA event that has at least $10,000 prize money for the total event. So stewards need to be at shows if possible, and especially at the big shows. However, we do need to educate the organising committees of how essential it is to have stewards to put out the little grass fires before they become bushfires, especially in this day and age with the animal rights groups and also the social media that just can be quite brutal. There are 4 levels of FEI stewarding. So, and once you are an FEI steward, you can also get the opportunity to use an FEI program that might subsidise your travel costs to other countries for further education and experience. Now we'll move on to workbooks, which you should all have a copy of the steward workbook and the rules and regulations and steward manuals. The rules and regulations that you would need as a steward for jumping are the basic EA current jumping rules, and also if you can have the FEI jumping rules. The FEI veterinary regulations are used occasionally, and the EA general regs are very important for you. There's also an app that you can put on your device, and it's got the FEI rules available on that. And you can also download and have on a device the 3 parts of the steward manual, the actual steward manual for jumping, another section is called annexes, and then there's annex 6 of schooling obstacles. We'll be looking at a bit of that as we go on tonight. It's good as a steward to have those digital or hard copies within reach when you're at an event, and you remember where the different parts of the rules are and where to refer to them. Principles of stewarding. What is the purpose of stewarding? Now, I wonder if you can answer that yourselves just in your own mind at the moment. There are actually 3 main points. Purpose of stewarding. And yes, you're quite right, to protect the welfare of the horse and to ensure fair play. And the 3rd part is to support the organising committee and the other officials in your team in the successful running of the event. what is stewarding in terms of the Olympic disciplines? Keeping in mind, not to be confused with stewarding as in racing stewards or horse show horse stewards, or like royal show stewards. They are different types of stewards. But stewarding as far as the jumping events is all about the supervision of national and international events by trained individuals to ensure that the welfare of the horse is respected and that a level playing field is provided for all athletes participating at the event. Now, as I go on, please, if you want to add a comment or a question, please raise your hand or call out to Kim, because it's pretty quiet on this side of the computer. So please, I like, if you can, a little bit of interaction would be great. Stewarding key responsibilities. Now, there are about 10. And can you think of any yourselves? Basically, what are the duties of stewards? So obviously to respect the welfare of the horse, keeping that in mind, to also abide by the EA officials code of conduct, and also to ensure that all areas of the venue, including the stables and the paths and arenas, are safe and hazard-free, to act on any incidents or infractions of the rules and report these to the chief steward or to the judge or the organising committee. The steward also assists during any horse inspection. The steward oversees helps oversee all the practice arenas and ensures that all practice obstacles are correctly constructed in accordance with the height and type of the competition. The steward ensures the correct use of saddlery and dress and helps carry out a hind boot check and or a boot and bandage check as required. Stewards also monitor the stable areas and yards and keep safety in mind. Horse abuse, of course, is foremost in the minds of everyone. So where would you find that if you thought you might have a case of horse abuse? Where would you look up your rules? Can you all call out the article numbers as we go through this presentation tonight? So where would you find horse abuse? And the answer is in the jumping rules, Article 243, and in the general regulations, Article 142. They're a little bit different to each other, and it's good to know what they contain and how to deal with any procedures of finding an injury or blood on a horse and how to report that. If accidental blood is found on a horse before or after competing, the steward is to alert the rider and the groom to attend to the wound before the horse goes into the competition area. Now I'm just going over to the jumping rules, and if any of you have your EA current jumping rules ready, might be handy to look up Article 243 while we speak, and also the general regulations. So in the national jumping rules, Article 243, use of horses. Now, abuse of a horse in any form is absolutely, not tolerated. So if the horse seems to be in pain or he has an injury, so that is abuse. Any form of cruel, inhumane or abusive treatment is strictly forbidden, and there are a series of sanctions that apply to that. Wrapping of horses is a bit of a grey area, and wrapping means when someone deliberately makes the horse hit a fence. So then he'll knock himself, give himself a bit of a fright, and then go into the arena and try and jump a little bit higher and wider so as not to hurt himself again. So there's a section there in abuse of horse about the wrapping of the horses. That also includes a rider holding or pushing a horse into a fence. And a bit hard to actually call that the rider has been doing that. They might just call out, "Oh, sorry, that was just a bit of bad riding." If you're not sure, you can use your camera on your phone, take photos, take a video even, and it can be discussed later. And the rider can be sanctioned by the judge later. The steward does not do any of the eliminations or disqualifications to anybody. Excessive use of the whip. Now, a lot of people say, oh, the whip can be used 3 times, but yes, that's true. After that, they are eliminated in the competition. But 1 use of the whip, if it's really hard and nasty, that can be an excessive use of the whip. The whip is not to be used to vent an athlete's temper. Such is always excessive, and that's written in the rules. So out in the warm-up arena, if someone whips a horse just once, but really, really hard, you can report them to the judge. Again, you'll need to have some sort of evidence that happened. Maybe you'll have a witness as well. Once more, take a photo. If there's a mark on the horse, well, that will mean he will be definitely not allowed to start, and he could get a further sanction for that. The use of a whip on a horse's head is always excessive use, and a horse should never be hit more than 3 times in a row. If the horse's skin is broken, it's always considered excessive use of the whip. So there are also other forms of abuse that are listed there, like hypersensitizing or desensitizing the limbs. Over in the general regulations now, if you've got your general regs there, have a look at Article 241. I'm pretty sure it is. You will see that there are more abuses of horses written there. Sorry, 142. I got the numbers around the wrong way, sorry. Abuse of horses, Article 142 in the general regulations. And it lists 8 points there, including at 2.4, you can't jab the horse in the mouth with the bit or any other device. So that's also an abuse of a horse. Now, if you see any of these abuses, the idea is to stop the abuse straight away. So yell out to the rider, get them a little bit embarrassed, get them to stop the abuse. If they're really cross with the horse, ask them to dismount, and so that they're not going to touch the horse again. And report them to your chief steward or to the judge. Now, if you find blood on your horse, and that means if there's blood on the horse's flank, or if there's blood in the mouth from bleeding, like the bit's it's been cutting into the lips, then the judge has to eliminate them, and they are not allowed to start in a competition. However, if they've just bit their tongue, you may, and the judge also may authorise the wiping of the mouth and the tongue, and if the blood stops, then they're allowed to compete. They're not allowed to go into the arena with blood showing. Blood coming out of the nose doesn't lead to disqualification. However, the steward must try and find a vet to examine the horse before it's allowed to compete again. If there's blood as an accident, like the horse has knocked itself on the leg, you just point that out to the rider, ask the rider to fix it before he goes into the arena. And or once again, if it needs a vet, you try and find a vet for that. Now, if there's actually blood on the horse from spurs, when the rider comes out of the arena after competing, there is a correct steward's protocol that you do. It's actually Annex 16 in the steward's manual. And basically, the steward must inform the rider, or they call them athletes these days, that there's an issue with blood on the horse's flanks, and the steward finds a steward to stay with the horse. Steward also takes photos. Now, can you think to yourself, what photos of what? Well, obviously a close-up of the actual injury and the blood. Also a photo of the horse to show its identification with the actual injury. If it was spurs that created the blood, then you take a photo also of the actual spurs, and you notify the chief steward or the judge. Now, I know there are some judges watching tonight, and part of your duty is in the judge's box to actually have someone nominated to go down and see any horse that the steward or chief steward has reported to you that has an injury. So then it's the judge that comes down from the judge's box that actually makes the ruling whether the horse is allowed to compete or whether they're eliminated or not. Okay, the steward with the horse can go to a quiet area, that always keeps an eye on the horse that's got the blood there. When the chief steward arrives, hopefully there is a chief steward, they check that all that of the above has happened. They put on an unused latex glove and they lay the back of their hands against the area to transfer the blood from the horse to the glove. And if there is blood transferred to the glove, that does prove that there was blood on the flanks. So then another photo of that is taken, and also the actual, it's a good idea too to video all that happening. The glove is then also put into a like a plastic bag, a sealed plastic bag. But the athlete or rider is advised that of what is happening, and he must remain available with the supervision of a steward until further notice, and then it's up to the ground jury member to study the photos and whatever and make a call.
Jan, if I just ask a question?
Yes.
So if it was an instance of blood in the mouth and someone's been down to check it and decided that it's not an ongoing problem and it's okay for the horse and rider to continue, do we just they're right to go into that particular competition? We just move them down the draw?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
And also for judges to note that this rule has been updated in the last few years because of the big competitions where there are 2 rounds. And let's say that a steward notices blood on a horse's flank after it's taken part in the 2nd round or a jump off, and didn't have blood when it completed the 1st round, then it may be eliminated only from that 2nd round. So therefore, that horse is eligible for prizes. Okay, in the past he was disqualified, meaning he was not eligible for any prizes.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just for the judges amongst us tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Again, it's not the role of the steward or the chief steward to inform the rider that they've been eliminated. That is the responsibility of the judge or the ground jury. Now, that's about all on abuse of the horse from me. But has anyone else got any other comments, please, before we move on? No, all good.
So, I was just going to say, remind everybody that you're muted. So if you've got something to say, unmute, and I can see that there's a hand up there.
Okay. Liz Richardson. Yes. Hi, Liz.
You're on mute, Liz, so you need to unmute first.
Should be little bottom left hand on my screen is the little microphone. There you go.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. When you talk about the blood on their side, I gather you're talking like from a spur or something like that. Very often it's just a rub, no blood as such. Are we still, which I know Sam's been pulled up for because she had a horse with a white patch where her foot sat and often rubbed. Is that what we're talking about?
That's right, and that's exactly why the glove is used. And if it's just the back of the steward's hand, it's inside the glove, it's placed against that raw red area. If there is blood transferred onto the glove, then that means that is the blood.
Right, but if there's no blood transferred, then it's not made, then it doesn't matter.
That's correct. And then it's up to the rider to quickly try and fix it before they compete again.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments about abuse of the horse?
So there's nothing else in the chat, and
Okay.
I don't see any other hands up.
All right, we'll move on. Practice arenas. Now, in your rule books,
Sorry, Nicholas just put his hand up, so maybe
I'll go back. Okay, go, Nicholas.
Yeah, apologies. I'm trying to find the hand up there for a bit. Question. So we talk about safety of a horse in the yards, and we also talk about safety of the horse generally on the grounds and things. What about if a horse turns up in a really unsafe float or a truck? What's our responsibility there?
Okay, duty of care, I guess. And at the start of all the rule books, well, the Jones and EA jumping and FEI jumping rules is the code of conduct for the welfare of the horse. Part of that is transportation.
Okay.
Oh, good. The FEI have actually put out some kind of online course about transportation for all riders and trainers and whatever to look at. It's brand new. It's on the FEI site. Now, as far as our jurisdiction goes, we can't actually blatantly go up to someone and say, you've got a crap float. It's no good. So you've got to be very tactful, bring in your communication skills that we talked about in the generic course. I would actually approach the organising committee on that one as well, because you need some kind of backup from the officials there. It can't, otherwise it could be seen as, one person commenting on something else. And just have a chat, and talk to them, find out what you can, listen to them. So what are you saying? The float is not safe, is that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are obviously there's grades of floats, and even an old float can be safe. It can not be an issue, sort of thing. But
Sure.
If you've got a float, I don't know, for example, it turns up and you can see most of the floor's giving way, and it's sagging underneath, and potentially a horse could put its foot through it. I don't know, or something where it's going to be an absolute detriment to the horse, sort of thing. Obviously, there's different standards for dividers and things like that. People have some really flash stuff, and people just have chain or rope just dividing their horses, which if their horses are used to, that's fine. But it's just more if it was really going to see an injury caused to the horse.
Okay, that's a good one. Thanks, Nicholas. Good on you.
That's right.
I think, yes, get the opinion of someone else, like from the organising committee or an experienced horseman that you know that those people are going to respect.
Yep.
Okay. They mightn't respect a steward if they don't know who you are. But they might, if they know, you know, if there's a name of someone there that they know, you could introduce them, have a little chat about, you know, transporting your horse. Just happen to notice your float. What do you think about the flooring in your float, et cetera, if you realise that could be a bit of an issue. We wouldn't want to see your horse hurt, would we? And go down that path.
Yep,
Is there any opportunity, and some of the participants might know this, is there any opportunity to say anything from a road safety perspective? Like if they are not paying any attention to the organisers, can you call on other authorities?
I don't know, has anyone got any thoughts there?
A couple of Jennies who might be able to help us.
I just thought it would have come back to the horse being paramount, safety of the horse being paramount.
That's right, yes.
I really think that we always go back to that, and always the main thing, the horse's welfare is paramount.
And
You'd
again,
hope people would be appreciative of the information and hopefully would take action. So.
yes, and they'll be terribly embarrassed too, so you've got to keep that in mind as well.
Yes.
But it's also good to have a copy of your rules and have access to them very quickly, so you can show people and read to them about the transportation. So, which brings me back to, as a steward, you must know where to find these rules very quickly. So you might want little sticky notes if you've got a hard copy rule book, or just a good memory if you've got digital copies. Okay, we'll move along.
Before you do, there's another hand up from Joe Crosby.
Okay.
Yeah, there. I don't know how much jurisdiction we have really, but there are guidelines for land transport of animals, including horses, put out by, let me see, it's a government thing. It's Department of Ag, Fisheries and Forestry. So there are actually specific guidelines that you could potentially show someone, I guess. I know guidelines aren't law, but they tend to, they're sort of the step before law, aren't they?
That's a good point. Thanks, Joe. And again, I think having something in print that you can show someone, I'd start with the welfare of the horse and go from there. All right, we will move on. And now practice arenas. So you've all had time to think, where would you find that in your rule book? Can anyone call out the article number in your jumping rules? 201, did I hear? Yes, very good. Okay, right at the start of the rule book, 201 means it's right near the front, because the jumping rules start at 200 and they finish at 283, whereas the general regs start at 100, and the other discipline rules start at other numbers. Okay, so that's how you know if it's towards the front, middle, or the back of your jumping rules. So there's a lot of information there about arena, schooling areas and practice obstacles in Article 201 in your jumping rules. So a lot of it also is common sense, and so is that code of conduct for warm-up arenas. So if you can see that there under Article 201, that's an Australian edition, and anything to do just with Australia is in italics in our jumping rules. So our jumping rules are basically the FEI rules, and the Australian extra bits are in italics for EA. I don't know, code of conduct has been around for about 10 years, I think, maybe longer. And it's basically common sense and respect and good manners, plus a few other points like you can only build a warm-up jump 10 centimetres higher and wider than the maximum height of the jumps out on the arena for that competition. Now, we'll just have a look at this photo here in front of me, and we can have a look at the pros and cons of safety fencing, visual and verbal contacting. It looks like a lovely open paddock. It's nice and flat, perhaps a little bit too large, because if it's a windy day and you're a steward, would they all hear you if you had to call out? Probably not. So there's no actual fencing. But this was really a warm-up for an eventing section of show jumping. The good part is that the 3 fences are all going the same way. So when you look at warm-up fences, look at the flags first thing. So they're all jumping from right to left. So that's good. Otherwise, if you had, say, the middle fence with the flags around the other way, just imagine if a horse ran out at either that spread fence or the vertical, that could cause a problem for someone coming head on towards it. So that's a risk management thing, that as a steward you flag your fences so they're all going the same way. And there are usually 3 fences, but in the rules you only really need 2 fences, the vertical and the spread fence, sometimes called an oxer. The cross rail is just an extra that a lot of riders like, and so if there's room you can have those 3 fences. There's also an American system where there are 4 fences spread in a big warm-up area, and each rider has the use of that 1 fence only, and then they are allowed to change the flags, make it a vertical or an oxer, and jump either way if they want. That's an American system. So this is what we basically see in Australia. So spread fence, vertical and a cross rail. Apart from that, it all looks quite good. Those people standing there aren't watching what's going on, but then again, nothing is going on, so that's fine. That horse is standing next to the cross rail. If it was a small confined arena, I would ask the horse not to stand near the fences. Okay, you want other riders, when they're warming up, to be able to canter safely around all the fences and not bang into anybody.
Okay, Jan, there's a couple of people with their hands up if you're able to.
Yes, yeah, I like this.
Is
It's
it
good.
Joe, I think, is it Joe from New South Wales? You've got your hand up.
Yeah, Jane.
Jane, sorry.
No, that's okay. I should name myself properly. And I'm just wondering if there is, what's the difference in terminology between a warm-up arena and a practice arena?
Can't really answer that, Jane.
Do they mean, are those terms used interchangeably, I guess?
I think so. I think overseas they have more money than us, and they have more arenas. So they have warm-up arenas that might not have fences. Mm-hmm. They have practice arenas, which is like the last practice or the last warm-up. So I'm not quite sure of the actual terminology, Jane. I think they are just interchangeable.
Yep. Okay. No, that's great. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure I used the right language.
Yep. Okay. Steve.
And
any thoughts on the fact that this isn't an enclosed area if a horse was to become loose?
Yes, that was what.
Very amount of chasing down.
Yeah, I mentioned that before. It's quite unusual for straight show jumping competitions to have an open paddock like that. But as this is a warm-up for actual eventing, this particular shot, I guess they're allowed to go wherever they like. But you are right, in show jumping there would be a defined area. Most show jumping grounds don't have the privilege of having such a big paddock.
Jan, it's Chris Wallace here. I just want to qualify that is actually an eventing cross-country warm-up. where they can have fixed obstacles and show jump obstacles. So the arena is, the warm-up area is very large because they have to be given the opportunity to have a good gallop. So it is not actually a show jump warm-up arena. Also for the practice area, I think that would apply in Australia more to a long format eventing competition, because we do have horses there for the 3 or 4 days, and they do need practice areas for jumping as opposed to warm-up areas.
And they go at fast speeds, don't they?
Yes, but for this, this is actually a warm-up for the cross country. But prior to that, we would have had a practice area for cross country the day before cross country, so they could try, you know, they could practice over the fixed obstacles. But we also have practice show jumping areas for the 2 or 3 days before as the competition proceeds, so riders come out and also show jump their horses, and they are called practice areas, whereas the warm-up is the sort of final warm-up before the competition.
Right, thank you. That qualifies that. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Now, the practice arenas, as we said, are in Article 201, and also there is a written text in the Steward Jumping Manual called Annex 6, Part 1. And so I'll just go, sorry, back we go. But we'll go now to Annex 6, Schooling Obstacles, which is a supplementary pictorial of the written words. So now please bear with me, and I'm just going to do a new share, all right, and I'm going to bring in the manual share. Okay, so some of you might have this available also on your computers. I'm not going to look at every page because there are 49 of them, and I might skip a couple, but this is a really good little picture booklet that explains the rules in pictures. So jumping a bit. All right, the stewards should be standing in between the fences and a little bit at the front, out of the way, but so that they can see the takeoff and they can see up close if the rails like in the spread fence are not offset. That is, that the back rail is level or higher than the front rail. They can also see whether the ground lines are directly under the fence or up to 1 metre in front, but not pushed in underneath the fences to make a false ground line. There should always be one vertical and one spread obstacle in the schooling area. So now we've got the word schooling areas thrown in as well, Jane. So we've got warm-up, practice and schooling areas. Okay. Rubbish bins or anything else not provided by the organising committee is forbidden. So if someone wants to jump a Liverpool tray, whatever, they should ask before the competition and ask the organising committee to find one for them. Then it's okay, as long as everyone has the opportunity. That's where the fair play comes in. Everyone must have exactly the same opportunity to practice over the same kinds of obstacles. Again, you can't have blankets or towels or jackets on the wings or anything like that either. Direction of the jump, so looking from right to left, you never can have a pole resting on the front of the cup, but it can be on the back of the cup within certain reasons. So straight away look at the flag. So this is jumping from right to left, and it's just showing that some of these poles are offset, and also the rails down here. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but on that top left one, You can't have that because the back pole is on the front of the cup. A top right one, you can have the front rail on the back of the cup. Bottom left, you can have the back rail on the back of the cup. Bottom right, you can't have the front rail on the front of the cup. That's a tongue twister. Okay. 9. These are called offset rails because jumping from right to left, the back rail is lower than the front. So that is wrong. That is not allowed. This one, the picture on the left shows the rail is being jumped from left to right, and this top rail is on the back of the cup, so that's okay. Now the second picture on the right, this is not permitted on the back pole of a spread as it may impede the release of the safety cup, but it is okay for a vertical fence for the top rail. I jump one again. That's just too close. The height's wrong there. And again there. So you've got some offset poles there. Again, offset lower poles are never allowed. Looks a bit confusing, but if you go through this yourself at your own time, it does make sense. Ground lines are, as I said, they're allowed to be placed directly underneath the first part of an obstacle or up to 1 metre away on the takeoff side. And if there's a ground line on the takeoff side of the vertical obstacle, there's to be a ground line equidistant on the other side. But a ground line may never be used on the landing side of a spread obstacle. 15. Same picture there. So some of these are the same, just with different pictures and diagrams. Walk poles, now this gets a bit confusing for people. Poles on the ground are allowed to be walked over. However, they're elevated at either one end or both ends. They are not allowed to be walked over. That's because that's a little bit like wrapping a horse. A horse might think that rail is meant to be on the ground and he might bang in his legs and trip over it. So they can trot over those poles there, but they cannot walk over them if they are elevated at either end. Safety cups, we'll be looking at a safety cup in a moment. Now for all FEI classes, for the judges out there, safety cups must have the name of the FEI approved manufacturer on the cup. So these are all safety cups, breakaway cups at the back of the spread fences, and there must be one on each side, of course. And if you're in the warm-up, you're the steward that gets there early and you can't find any breakaway cups, do you let the riders still warm up and jump? No, you don't. You make sure the rails are down on the ground and you go and find some safety cups before you allow anybody to jump. You don't want to get into trouble if there's an accident and you're negligent. So they can only jump spread fences if there are safety cups on the back poles. And on this particular safety cup, on that red one, the manufacturer's name is RIEL. It's a brand from Germany. And there are, I think, about 20 different manufacturers worldwide. John Wilshire was the only one in Australia that had approved jumping cups, safety cups that he made. But unfortunately, he's passed away now.
Jan, there's a hand up there from Steve. Are you?
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Just in the context of what you're saying then about poles being on the ground, no safety cups available, are riders then still allowed to cross those, either walk or trot?
So the picture I've got up now, yes.
That was where you first raised it, where they're elevated.
Yes, they can trot over those, but not walk. And if there are no safety cups,
So the poles are just on the ground, like you were saying, in terms of at the,
yes, they can trot over those, yes.
but not walk.
That's if they're elevated at least one end. If they're in a cup at one end, they cannot walk over the poles.
Okay, thinking with you.
Go back there. Top left, you see that's got a cross on it, so that's forbidden because
I'm with
it's
you on
raised at one end.
The scenario you painted, though, was when there were poles on the ground prior. So you're the first steward, you're there early. There are no safety cups available. So they're all ground rails, basically.
Hmm.
And you've gone off to find
Yes.
safety
Yes.
cups. Are they still allowed to cross the rails?
Yes, they are. Yes. Okay, because they're on the ground, they can walk or trot over them if they want to.
Okay, that's different. All right.
Different to what?
Jan, you would be
Yes.
allowed to jump the verticals, wouldn't you? But not oxes.
That's
Well,
right.
There's no cups there, so you're not.
But the safety caps are only used for the back rail of an oxer. So the riders could be jumping a vertical fence while you go to find safety cups, couldn't they, Jan?
That's correct.
So it would be a height equivalent to the class that they could jump as a vertical. They don't just have to have rails on the ground. It's
Yeah.
just that the oxer would not be able to be jumped.
That's correct. Is that clear, Steve?
It is. Final question on that. Then they're allowed to jump without the presence of a steward.
No, they're not. So that's another. So if there's more than one steward, yes, of course. While one person goes to get their safety cups, yes,
The other one can put the verticals up.
that's correct.
But if you
Yeah.
were the one there, only one there early, and you've gone off to try and locate a safety cup, and the rails are on the ground, they then can't cross the rails.
Walk over them.
True. They
Just
can. Yeah,
technically jump
they
in.
can't. Yeah.
Cool with it. Thank you.
Okay. Good.
Okay, there's another question from Margaret. So seeing we're here at
Yes,
the moment
sure.
having questions, do stewarding, oh Margaret, why don't you say it? Or if you are you still on mute? Oh, she doesn't have a mic, sorry, she doesn't have a microphone.
Okay.
Do the stewarding rules apply for the duration of an event, such as if it's over several days, whether the rider is in the practice area or warm-up arena? She's wondering if a rider is allowed to hit the horse more than 3 times in a practice area, perhaps on the day before they compete.
No, that would be reportable.
So because I think what she's saying is, you know, when does all this commence from
The stewarding covers the whole event and all the grounds, with not just all the warm-up areas, but when they're riding all around the ground. So the same rules for helmets and boots and that sort of thing. And no rail spurs. All that is anywhere on the grounds, not just in the warm-up. So the same with whipping a horse more than 3 times elsewhere. It means they would get reprimanded, they would get a warning. And if it was severe, that would be reported to the judge with a witness as well. And then the judge is at the discretion of not allowing them to compete or not, or whatever. It's not. Okay, so horse abuse is not tolerated anywhere at any time. And as we even saw in the generic course, there have been a couple of people who have been sanctioned for horse abuse in their own homes, in training, in their own backyard, in their own warm-up.
Yes.
Okay, so just be aware, all the riders, that horse abuse is just not tolerated anywhere, on the grounds, in the warm-up, and even even in your own training establishment, because these days people with videos can just put it all on social media and there goes the end of our sport. So it's up to us as stewards to educate the riders and coaches to treat their horses well and to abide by the rules, and let everyone have a level playing field. Okay, we'll move on.
No, you've got a couple more hands up. You've got Liz Richardson with her hand up.
Okay, go Liz.
I'm just interested in, you said about before about they couldn't jump in the arena without a steward. There's many shows that don't have stewards where they obviously jump. You know, why? I don't quite understand the ruling.
Okay, that's true, Liz. And
in fact,
I know you
more
can't.
Shows don't and do.
I know, but we're talking about the wish world, and for FEI competitions when there are 5 FEI stewards, World Cup, yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
That
Thank
kind
you.
of thing. Day-to-day shows, I know it's going to be hard because there just aren't enough stewards at all the grounds. So anyway, we do the best we can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then Jane was next, I think, with her hand up.
My question, I think you've answered it, Jan, but my question was, as a steward, when do your stewarding responsibilities begin? Like, is it the dates of the show, or, you know, could they extend if you arrive early and you see an infraction before the start of competition or after the end of competition?
Depends on your particular contract with the organising committee, but yes, basically for the duration of the whole event.
Okay. Thank you.
Some big shows just want stewards for the main day, and so you've got to ask if you are actually in an official position if you're there for the earlier days. So as a steward, you need to know whether you can be there in an official capacity. So again, it's
great.
Yeah, a bit of a grey area, but basically when you arrive, if you know that you're there for that day, well, when you arrive, right through.
Okay, thank you, Joan.
Can I just quickly ask something there, though? If you saw a horse abuse issue, would you report that even if you hadn't started your official duties?
Yeah, anybody can. Any member of the public can report any horse abuse. Okay, and again, you advise people to have a witness and to have evidence like photos or a video.
Yeah.
And you always document it factually, unemotionally, just as it happened.
Thank you. And Steve, I'm not sure if he's put his hand up again or hasn't put it down.
Sorry, I hadn't put it down. Apologies.
Okay. Okay, that's all that I can see. So please go on.
All right. This one's important, this particular page here. For all obstacles up to and including 1.40 m, that should have an M after it, 1.40 m, you can build the warm-up fences up to 10 centimetres higher and wider than the competition in progress. If there's a competition that's higher than 1.40 m, we're talking now 1.45 m classes, the warm-up obstacles can not exceed 1.60 m in height or 1.80 m in width. Even if they're warming up for a puissance or a 6-bar, that's going to be, hopefully, they may jump higher than 1.60 m. They cannot warm up higher than 1.60 m or 1.80 m in width. Okay. Judges are in control. They have the ultimate control of the warm-up fences and the schooling areas there. So it's very hard for a judge to see what's happening in the practice arenas, but hopefully they they might have taped the fence. If there's no steward there, I suggest to judges that at least they put a piece of black tape around the metre-30 mark of the wings. And that should come up in the next slide. Here's one. Here we go. For instance, a cross pole cannot have the cups exceeding 1.30 metre in height, not the top of the cross pole, but the cups themselves, the top of the cups. And the cross poles, so the black tape there shows 1.30 metre, and the cross itself should have at least a 10 centimetre gap between where the two rails meet, because the rails should always be able to fall individually and freely. Now for 1 metre, okay, a cross pole may also be used below a pole at a vertical or as at the front of the spread. And if used at the front of the spread, the horizontal pole at the back cannot be higher than 1.30 metre. So again, the black tape is handy there. Sorry, back one. This has got a crossed pole under the rail, that is vertical, that is above the 1.30 metre mark, so that's allowed. And it looks ugly, but the fence on the left is okay because the cross pole hasn't exceeded that 1.30 metre mark with the top of the cups. And the rails can fall freely, but the fence on the right looks like a real mess, and that would wrap a horse. If he knocked that horizontal rail, it would not fall freely, so therefore that is not allowed. These are both ugly looking fences, and the one on the left is allowed in courses. I don't understand the one on the right though. It looks just a complete mess to me. And it looks like it's being jumped both ways. And it just looks ugly. But you can't do that you can't have either of those in a warm-up. Now the Liverpool trays, basically it must be under the actual front plane of the obstacle and no more than 1 metre past it. So, and you can be in various positions like these. It cannot be away from the fence like that. That's okay. It's not no more than 1 metre in the front. Water trays can be under spread fences. These are called placing poles, and they can't be closer than 2.5 metres at the front or even at the back, and can only be used at verticals up to 1.30 metre. Sorry about this jumping business. Placing poles behind a vertical, again, minimum 2.50 metres at the trot or 3 metres at the canter, and again, no higher than 1.30 metre. Placing poles again, they're never allowed at boxes. Again, placing poles. If it's further than 6 metres away, it's not called a placing pole, it's called a pole on the ground, so that's fine. There's no restriction. Katie Laurie used to like those. Oh, sorry, I can't get it. There we go. Now, when the poles are like that across the middle, they're called guide poles. And we had ground lines, placing poles, and now guide poles. And you can see what's allowed and what's not. And again, the guide pole can't be closer than 3 metres at the back of a vertical fence. And that's fine too. If a vertical fence is 1.30 meters or higher, it must have a second rail underneath it. So that's where that 1.30 meters again comes in. You can have one rail with one end in the cup and one end on the ground. That's fine. You can build fences like that. Again, showing the 1.30 meter mark, and they are not allowed because there's no rail in cups underneath the 1.30 meter. Ground lines do not count. But you can have small bounces up to 1 meter and maximum 3 meters, 2 meters 50 in between, only verticals. And now this is a miscellaneous set of pictures. You can't have the rails jammed in. So that's the reason why you can't have people touching the wings too. As the horse approaches, sometimes they just might happen to push on the wing, which would jam the rail and wrap the horse. Rails always have to fall easily when hit. You can't have rails like that on the left or on the right, but you can have slanted rails if they're parallel. No, that's about it then. Okay, so that brings us to the end basically of all of that schooling, Annex 6. Any comments about any of that, please? No? Good. All right, we'll go back to the PowerPoint now. Okie doke. So do you all remember where to find information about the code of conduct for warm-up areas, for the practice arenas and the schooling obstacles? You'd start in your jumping rules, Article 201 and also Annex 6, schooling obstacles. Now, falls. Where would you find falls in the rule book? And that's right, 224. So, EA jumping rules, Article 224, EA general regs, Article 100. And there's also the concussion protocol and EA website, health and safety. Do we have George with us tonight? George Primus?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, George.
I better turn on my camera.
Hi. Welcome, George. You are the chair of the new Health and Safety Committee.
Yes, I am.
Congratulations.
I also happen to be a judge, which is why I'm here.
And a level 2 EA jumping judge.
Yeah.
Well done. And maybe a steward as well. So that's good. Can you please tell us when the Zoom for the health and safety sessions will be on?
I think the ones for this year are done. Let me have a quick look while we health and safety. So on the EA website, if you go health and safety, it'll be under news, which I've got here. Concussion last final date for 2021 is 17th of November. So that's
on Wednesday.
That's on Wednesday. So you want to get in touch with the office if you want to join. I'm sure they'll be happy to have you.
Yep.
Actually, if you go to the website under health and safety news, there's an article there and there's a link to register. So
sure.
And that's the last one for this year, but there will be more.
Okay.
Aren't there also a couple of national health and safety forums coming up in a week or so?
Yeah, that's separate. It's a health and safety conference, and there's a number of goes over 2 days, I think, and it covers a number of health and safety and horse welfare issues. So it covers a wide range of topics, and there's something there for everyone. So I suggest that everyone have a look at that and sign up if you're interested. That's the plug out of the way. Thank you, Jan.
That's great, George. Thank you. Nice to meet you and hear your voice. It's good.
Thanks, Jan.
Okay, so So back to falls, if someone falls in the practice arena, that's the steward's responsibility to know what the process is. First of all, you've got to remember that, and it's written down in the Article 224, that the definition of a fall is that an athlete is considered to have fallen when involuntarily he is separated from his horse. Now, if it happens, that this is outside the competition arena. So outside the competition arena, it's involuntarily, he's separated from his horse. And if an athlete has voluntarily dismounted, it is not considered a fall. Okay, so a little bit different to outside the competition arena as to in the competition arena. Fall in the practice arena. So there are various sections here in Article 224, and you just have to wade through them to find the right one. In the case of a fall of an athlete or a horse in the practice arena prior to entering the competition arena or the first or second round of a competition, the athlete must be checked by the events medical service and also the horse checked by a vet if possible before the athlete or horse may be permitted to take part of the round in progress. If this is taking up a bit of time, the ground jury may give the athlete a later starting position in that round if necessary. In case of a fall of an athlete and or a horse in the practice arena prior to entering the competition arena for a jump off, the ground jury may, at its discretion, decide to give the athlete a later starting position if possible, or to delay the jump off for a reasonable amount of time for the athlete to be checked by the events medical service. Okay, so I'm not sure of the new rules, but I think it's a fluid situation, this concussion and health and safety issue about falling off, and it will still be that the riders have to be checked by the medical service, and then the way it is now, it is up to the judge to accept whether the medical service gives them the okay or not. So I won't go into that anymore, but
that is correct at the moment, Jan.
Yes, there is there are different forms.
There is a lot of work being done on that.
And there are different forms for judges, lucky people, to fill out and make sure the person receives all the proper care and information. Okay, are there any questions about falls or comments about that?
There is a question about that relating to the concussion training.
Yes. Whether
the stewards have to do concussion training.
No, this is just for interest. No, you don't. So it's just advisable that you know a little bit whether someone's had a nasty fall or not, which I guess you'd probably tell anyway, wouldn't you? So, but there is a big push on EA for health and safety and of course the concussion. So it is available there. But no, you don't have to know much about it except to know to call the first aid or to send them to the first aid if they can walk over there. Okay, and the steward also has a radio and a phone, hopefully, to either talk on the two-way to the judge or the organising committee and the medics, and also a phone for any discreet or private calls that they might like to make.
There's also Helen has her hand up.
Oh, hi, Helen. Have to unmute yourself.
I've done that now.
Good.
As a steward, are there forms that need to be completed if you witness a fall?
No.
It's just your responsibility to send them to the medical team. Is that correct?
That's correct. And advise the judge.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So I can just interrupt there for Helen, please, Jan, to say that in eventing there are rider fall forms that need to be filled out.
Okay.
So as a steward, if you're in the warm-up area, you're probably the witness to the fall. Out on the cross-country course, or on the show jumping actual course, it would be the judge, the fence judge, or the judge that would fill it out. But there are forms there, and you, as a steward, you need to carry some.
That's for eventing. Thanks, Chris. Good. All right, we'll move on. Dress and saddlery. I hope you all quickly know which article numbers to look up for that in the jumping rules. And if you have your jumping rules handy, do go to Article 256 in the EA current jumping rules. Now, dress and saddlery. So it's the article starts off saying the competitors must be neat and tidy, and that's in relation to whatever the type of competition is. So, and if there are spectators and sponsors, well, then you expect them to be in their very best attire, of course. The official attire for EA is that they are required to wear a riding jacket, white or light fawn breeches. So that's, most riders nowadays do wear those colours, white or light fawn, and it has to be light fawn, not dark shades of fawn or beige. But so the rules say white or light fawn breeches, black or brown boots, and other dark coloured boots may be approved at the discretion of the judge, because the judge is a representative of EA. The boots must have a heel. Shirts may be long or short sleeves. They must have sleeves. Must have a predominantly white collar. So long sleeve shirts must have white cuffs, and a white tie or rat catcher must be worn. Competition jackets, there's a little bit of information about that, but that's all right. But if a jacket is not worn because maybe the weather is hot or humid, the shirts must have sleeves, and either long or short sleeves are permitted, which is just part of what we just said anyway. Earphones and or electronic communication devices may never be worn during the jumping competitions, but they may wear one earphone at any other time while mounted. And the reason for that is so that they can hear anyone calling out to them, so to avoid any accidents. Now, spurs, this is a new one that's come in this year. Rail spurs, that is spurs with a notched or serrated rotating disc, are not authorised anywhere within the grounds of jumping events. Spurs with a rotating disc that is not notched or serrated are allowed. And we'll look at some pictures in a minute. Now, saddlery. So this is right underneath Article 257. So when it says in the competition arena, it means exactly that. And it doesn't say that you can't have that gear in the warm-up. So the way to read the rules is if it's not there, it's usually okay. But you also back up what is under tack and saddlery in our jumping rules with the Stewards manual. And there's a lovely chart, several charts actually, of what is allowed. And we go with whatever is allowed for senior riders in the FEI Steward manual. So just remember, whatever it says for the senior riders, that's what we accept for all our riders, whether they're kids or children, juniors, whatever, okay? We accept what it says for senior riders, FEI, Steward manual. So back in the competition arena, the horses can have small cheek pieces that do not exceed 3 centimetres from the side of the horse's cheek. No more than 1 martingale stopper per rein can be used, and a running martingale is just that. It's not to be made to function as a standing martingale. We do allow standing martingales up to and including competitions a metre 30 in height in Australia only, but not in FEI competitions. There are no restrictions on bits. However, the ground jury has the right, based on veterinary advice or common sense, to forbid the use of a bit that may cause injury to the horse. Reins must be attached to the bit or directly to the bridle. A maximum of 2 pairs of reins may be used. And if 2 pairs of reins are used, 1 pair must be attached to the bit or directly to the bridle. Gags and hackamores are allowed. Draw reins, running reins and market harbourers are forbidden in the competition arena, except during prize-giving ceremonies. So therefore, they are allowed in the warm-up arena. Now, in the competition arena, blinkers and fly masks that cover the horse's eyes are forbidden. And anywhere within the grounds of the event, stirrups cannot be tied down, they must be hanging freely. So the athlete's or rider's feet and the rider can fall if they're going to have a fall. Dressage whips can be used on the flats in the warm-up, but not over the jumps. Only a whip no longer than 75 centimetres in length can be used over poles or any obstacle. No substitute for a whip may be carried. Total maximum weights of equipment allowed to be placed on a horse's leg, front or hind, which includes all the boots and fetlock rings, etc., but not the shoe or hoof boot, is 500 grams. Now, hind boots. This is an interesting area, and there are special rules for young horse competitions. Now, these are specific competitions for horses where the age is actually specified in the competition, for horses that are aged between 4 and 8 years old. And this year they're actually including 9-year-old horses that may go into futurities because of the COVID lack of shows that we had. So those horses didn't have a chance to compete, so they're allowed to compete in futurities this year, I believe. So for young horse boots, they can only have the maximum 16 centimetre short protective boots, and they have 1 Velcro strap, which is 5 centimetres wide, with non-elastic. Okay, so in other words, just a soft protection, non-elastic Velcro boot. That's on the hind legs of young horses. They can wear any kind of boot on the front legs. And now for other competitions, and this includes everyone, children's, juniors, Ammies, whatever, right through. The hind boot can only be 20 centimetres at the maximum, at the longest points. And the inside of the boot must be smooth, and there's to be no extra hard parts there that would cause a bit of injury or pressure on the horse in the wrong places. Now, there's a fair bit about the hind boots, and there's also, we'll go to this one here. This is a chart about hind boots for open type competitions. The hind boots can have 3 kinds of fasteners. It can be Velcro type that can be elastic or non-elastic, and they can have 1 strap 5 centimetres wide or 2 straps maximum, and they must be minimum 2.5 centimetres wide, 2 straps. They can have stud type fasteners that are elastic, and again, only 2 fasteners allowed, each one minimum 2.5 centimetres wide, and basically fit holes to fit the studs. Or they can have hook type fasteners, quite similar as well, and must be elastic. So that's copied there in the EA rules, and this page actually came from the FEI rules and the FEI Stewards manual, so they're all the same there. Here are some pictures. This is new to me, pull-up socks. I haven't seen pull-up socks before. With our hind boot rule, bandages can't be worn under the boots. Bandages can be worn instead of boots, hind boots, but not as well as, except for pull-up socks. They are allowed to go under hind boots. Pressure socks are not allowed at all when competing, but they are allowed around the stables and when leading the horse around for grazing. Down the bottom, they're overreach bell boots. They are allowed. These are heel protectors with incorporated pastern straps. So pastern straps are not allowed, but the heel protector without the pastern strap is allowed. Fetlock rings are okay as long as they're soft and not going to injure the horse, but pastern straps are now not allowed. Now, that's all a bit of theory, so we're going to ask Bronwyn Hugh from Brisbane to show us a bit of gear, and we'll talk about whether it's allowed or not allowed.
Okay, I'll start with a bridle. This is just one of the jumping bridles. I don't know if you can see it very well. It doesn't have the...
I might just get Jan, can you stop your share, and then people could put Bronwyn onto full screen perhaps and see her a little bigger.
Okay.
See if that works for people. Just try. I don't know if you're all aware, up on the, usually on the top right, you've got different ways of...
Oh, sorry, I've pressed something.
It's all right, it's only affecting you.
Okay.
If people, you can change your view under the top, up the top right, and you might be able to make Bronwyn bigger. So you just got to... So as Bronwyn speaks, if you're on speaker view, she'll come up bigger on your screen.
Okay, this is a jumping bridle without the throat lash that normally comes further back. So that's one of the jumping style bridles, which is allowed. This is an unusual noseband called a bosal. This is actually rope, which has been covered with PVC black tape. It's rather stiff. Now, Dan will tell you whether it's allowed or not. And in fact, it is allowed, but it just doesn't look great. Okay, moving on to one of the people said they had a horse that was rubbed. This is what's called a belly bandage, which goes around the horse like that, and where the boot sits with the spur, it stops any damage to thin skin sensitive horses. I think they're really great, but you do have to check them going into the competition arena and as well out, because that the horses still can be damaged. So we talked about some odd bits. This is an odd looking bit, but still quite legal for jumping, just rather strange. And that's the old Waterford, which is still fairly popular in jumping. I see that around a bit. This is an unusual little skinny bit, which I don't usually see very often, but I just thought I'd show you that one. Okay, what I wanted to show you was a bit guard with the sharp edges. I have one that I found at a practice fence, but I've actually put it in a safe place and I don't know where that is right now. So a smooth bit guard is fine. Even the one with the small brushes is fine, but the one with the sharp raised points, they have to be rounded off. They're really quite sensitive. Okay, and we talked about the hind boots for young horses. This is an example. This one is only 16 centimetres. I can measure that for you. It comes to 16 at the longest part, has a single strap, Velcro only, 5 centimetres. So, and it's very smooth inside. That's a young horse boot. So that one's allowed. If it was open class, this one is still allowed. It is 16 or 15 centimetres. It has 2 straps and they're actually 2.5 centimetres. So that one is allowed. Now I'll show you some unusual boots. This one I found in someone's tack box. It has an inside pocket. I don't know if you can see it. They used to put lead weights in these. You won't be seeing this because it has a buckle and it is way too long. I think you'll find this one is over length. It's actually 25 centimetres, so we shouldn't be seeing those anywhere. This one looks quite nice, but in actual fact, it's not that nice. It's the right length. It's got the right fastener, but it's actually 16 centimetres. What it has inside, I'm not sure if you can see, are all these hard lumps, quite a few of them. So there's several of those. They have, the inside of the boots must be smooth. Those are definitely not, but they look fine. The fasteners are right. So this is the old-fashioned boot that you shouldn't be seeing anywhere now. This is the pinch boot that they used to crank them up and really be very unkind to the horses. Okay, these are the spurs that are now not allowed. I'm sure you can see those rowels there. There's a smaller version which is actually a lot sharper as well. They're a bit hard to see sometimes. The stoppers on the reins, especially when they have martingales, only 1 pair of those, not 2. Some people put them front of the rings. Okay, the flags, just an example, in the practice fences, so red on the right, make sure everyone jumps that way. Jan talked about a jumping whip being 75 centimetres and it can't be weighted. This one is actually 75 centimetres. So that one is quite legal. And this is a dressage whip, which is 120 centimetres. It can be used on the flat, but riders may not jump a single fence with this in their hands. So that one is 120 centimetres and it's fine for flat work only. The other very, something that you should know how to use is a breakaway cup. Invariably when the rails get knocked down, people put these upside down. They are meant to go a certain way. That's the way they go. This is what they look like inside. So this is one that was broken that I found somewhere. So you can see there's a spring sort of set up inside. This one has a stamp on it, which is an FEI approved manufactured one. It's also got a great big story on the back here in English and some foreign other language, which I can't read. So that's about all I've got to show you for non-allowed gear. Anyone have any questions?
Well, I think that's fabulous, Bronwyn. Thank you very much. You've done well. Yeah, that's great. Not quite the same as us actually feeling something and looking at it in an actual face-to-face room or going out to the actual riders and having a look. And
Okay.
that's where your mentoring exercises will really be helpful. Okay.
Sorry, before you go on, there is a hand up.
Oh, okay.
From Emma. So
hello. My question, Bronwyn, with the back boots that had on the inside the little bumps.
Yeah.
If we suspect something on the inside of the boot, we ask the rider or their groom to remove the boot. We don't touch them. Is that correct? So we can inspect them?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
If they're coming in, we normally do a hind boot check.
Yep.
So we have to unfasten the boot, take it off, show you, and then it goes back on, but you have one gloved hand with a fresh glove that you can feel inside. If you just simply looked at the outside, that just looks fine, but the inside is just full of all these lumps.
Yeah.
It's not smooth.
Yeah.
Therefore, wouldn't be allowed. But the other one, the shorter one, now that one is smooth. It's just a short version, that's all.
Yeah.
So I hope I've answered that for you.
Yes, thank you.
There are more examples of boots that are allowed and not allowed in the FEI Stewards Manual. So just Google it. The FEI website, fei.org, is very huge, shall we say. It is huge to navigate. If you're having trouble finding the steward information, which is under the I am an official bit, just do a Google for steward manuals jumping, and then you'll see the three for jumping, and then just wade your way through those, and you'll see more photos of gear that is allowed or not allowed. Same with riding boots and that sort of thing. Okay. All right, now I'll try and get back to the presentation. We're nearly there, so thank you for staying with me. And I've just got to find my presentation now. Seem to have lost it a bit. Just a moment. Just got. Let me see. Can't see. Okay, now we're going through that. Now, here we are. Hind boot checks and boot and bandage control. Do you know the difference?
I'm
Yes.
not sure if we've just actually got it at the moment. I've got your list of files up on mine. I'm not sure if it's just me.
Oh, okay. New share. How's that?
That's it.
Ah, good. Okay, thank you. So, hind boot checks and boot and bandage control. What's the difference? Okay, the hind boot check happens before the riders and the horses go into the competition, and the boot and bandage control happens when they come out. So there's a picture on the next slide. Oops, sorry, back one. Here we go. So on the top right-hand photo, Sam Buchanan is being the groom for someone doing a hind boot check. He has loosened off the boots and then repositioned them without making sure that they are not too tight. That is a hind boot check. After competing, a boot and bandage check is a more thorough examination. The groom or steward removes all the leg boots and or the bandages, and it can be on all legs, or it could be just a random leg, or on one side only, whatever the stewards decide. Total weight allowed of the gear on each leg is 500 grams, and the chief steward does supply a little set of scales. They're not calibrated, so we don't want anyone to put in a protest. So there's about a 10% leeway on that. The gear is checked, more importantly, for any abnormalities, like pressure points when they shouldn't be and that sort of thing. And the horse is checked for any injuries anywhere on its body. And I know quite a few of you watched the Olympic equestrian events, and you would have seen the stewards walking either side of a horse as it left the arena, whether it was the dressage or jumping, and they were actually looking discreetly at the horse for any injuries. And then the horses were taken off for a boot and bandage check. Any questions about that or comments?
Yep, we've got a hand up from Liz
Yes.
Richardson.
Go, Liz.
Those boots, of course, are illegal.
Yes, this is an old photo. Correct.
That's right.
Well
just check.
spotted. Good girl. Yeah. Horse inspections and medication control policy. Where would you find information about all this? In the steward manual is the answer. Horse identification, and again, we've got an old passport, and you can see why. Look at the blue one. Look at the name. It says Equestrian Federation of Australia. So actually, EFA became EA in actually it was on the 14th of November 2008. So there you go. So this is a very old photo, but there's an FEI passport on the left, or EA papers is the booklet on the right. And there are 6 things that the registration papers tell us about the horse. Can you name 6 different things? Yes, very good again. The horse's name, his age, any markings, microchip number, the owner's name, and also vaccinations, especially for overseas horses. They have to have lots of vaccinations. For all FEI classes and major championships, there's a trot up or a horse inspection first, and that is part of the 3rd shadowing mentoring task, to be present when there is a trot up and horse inspection. So I'll explain what happens, and the stewards help in getting the horses in and out safely. So they let the horses enter. You can see down there we're one at a time, and the passport is presented to the vet who completes the ID check. Now the horse's microchip number might be read there at that spot, or it might have been read earlier out waiting to come on in, and that's where a steward could help get the microchip number and just check it is the same as the ID number in the passport. The horses should wear their own number that is given to them for that particular competition, and they wear that on their bridle. They're not allowed to have any other gear on them. They enter the area for the horse inspection, and they stand up nicely for the FEI vet to have a look at them. Also present will be the president of the ground jury or his delegate, and the chief steward should be there as well. The chief steward's in charge of setting up this area, and there'd be like witches' hats or pot plants or some markers for the horse to be led about 10 metres at a walk, and then straight away and on a loose rein for all this at a trot, straight line, turn to the right always, and then trot straight through, and the vet checks that the horse is fit to compete. It is not a horse inspection for buying or selling a horse, okay? It's an inspection to make sure the horse is fit to compete. And the horse is accepted, and then he's allowed to go. If he's doubtful, so there might be a little bit of lameness or something that the vet is not happy with, then he's sent to the holding box. There's another vet there called the examining vet, and that vet at the holding box can assess any injuries, and he can do palpitations of any area considered injured or painful. He can evaluate any pain in the feet using hoof testers. He can only do a passive flexion test of the distal limb joints to assess the range of motion. Can't do any active flexion tests, which is where you hold up, bend the leg up, and then trot away straight away. Not allowed to do that in the holding box. And the horse can be walked or trotted in a straight line or a circle. Then the horse can be represented back for a second horse inspection, but he doesn't get a further chance if he fails that, and there's no appeal against that decision. Sometimes the vet is able to come early in the next morning, and so the horse may be presented then in the next morning before the competition. Okay, so that's the theory of the horse inspection. Here are a couple of photos now of an actual scene. This is at SIAC, and that's a nice area. It's level, flat, and it's non-slippery, which is the requirements for the trot-up area. You can see the pot plant on the left is the mark at 10 metres where they commence their trotting after walking to that, and this particular horse is trotting straight through. So that's a nice, safe, quiet area. This one, I won't say too much, but it's for a 3-day event and horse trials overseas. Not prepared for a trot-up inspection at this stage. As you can see, there are people and a kid on a bike and a car in the background there. So not quite ideal for our show jumping. A lot of horses. It's quite a narrow track, and it's concrete too, so half of them would fail. We're back in Sydney in SIAC again, in front of the riders' room there. Again, the surface is flat and non-slippery and clean. However, it is also the main walkway or access for people as well as horses to get to and from the stables to the arenas. The vet there doesn't look like he's actually looking at the horse, but I am presuming that he's already made his judgment that the horse is fit to compete. Here are nicely dressed handlers and wearing sensible shoes. And again, the horses are nicely presented and they have their bridles and no doubt their numbers as well on them, and that's all. So no bonnets unless they actually ask. The riders or the handlers can use a dressage whip if they need to. The horses' hooves can have clear varnish on them, oil, but no hoof dye or paint is allowed. Any comments about the horse inspection? Good. Medication testing is, and there is a medication control policy, and this occurs in FEI, with Federation Equestrian International, national and state jumping events and national competitions with $2,000 or more total prize money in any competition, or $1,000 or more first prize. So usually the winner and a random place getter, or in fact any other horse, may be tested for prohibited substances that may enhance their performance. The FEI also very strong about all this anti-doping and clean sport, and there's several pages on their website. This one's a little bit old, but at least it lets you know that they're very aware and very proactive about clean sport. In Australia, our National Medication Control System policy is a little booklet, and it's found on the equestrian.org.au website under About EA and Policies.
Helen's got her hand up there. I'm not sure if we can.
Right, go Helen.
Sorry, I'm a bit slow on the uptake. If an event was not a steward at the time, but was an observer, you are concerned about the conditions of the trot-up, who would you approach?
The conditions of the trot-up, as in?
Well, as in there were far too many people mingling together, trucks and competitors leaving the event, all in a very close environment, and I had a safety concern. Who would I approach at that point in time?
Okay, we covered this in the generic section and under risk management, and as the chief steward should actually be in charge of organising a safe horse inspection. So if you're a concerned person, I would go to the chief steward about that first. That would be my first.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Right.
I obviously missed that.
Good. Thank you. Okay,
And
Mary.
before, yeah,
On the the medication control, if we take samples, is there anywhere that those get listed publicly to say guilty or not guilty?
Not these days. EA doesn't want to know about all that. So no, not on the EA site. Okay.
I noticed stock horses the other day listed theirs.
And we used to. EA used to,
Yeah.
but it's all about litigation and legal wording and whatever. So, Bronwyn, you are an EA medication person. Do you know any more about that?
No, yes, you can look up on the EA website to see if you are fortunate enough to have a negative result. But normally if you are the rider and you have tested positive to some prohibited substance, you will get the phone call within a few short weeks. But no, it's not put up on the EA website apart from being able to check to see if you've got a negative result, which normally takes 6 to 8 weeks. It's quite a long time. But there's no name, just a number. And you have to,
because you know your number from when you did your test. Yes.
Yes, on that.
Yeah, on the paperwork.
On the paperwork. That's the only way that you ever know.
Okay. And for the judges watching, you should know where this document is on the EA website under About EA, because you are the ones that actually say who's going to be targeted, or if it's a random test or obligatory test for the winner, that sort of thing. Or you can make the vets your delegates. Okay, but it's not, I think Bronwyn might correct me here, it's not the MCP person who actually dictates which horses to be actually tested. Is that right, Bronwyn?
100%. It has to come from the judge or the president of the ground jury.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they can, I know because I've just read it in the rules, they can actually delegate the vets in charge too, if they're busy, or the vet sees something that he wants tested. No?
Not about that, but never mind.
Let's stay with the judges in charge. Okay. I'm happy with that. And the judge has to sign the form too. So
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. So a targeted test could be at a judge's request. You might see strange behaviour. You might see a horse that's got a poor performance for some reason, or perhaps a magic performance after having a dreadful day the day before. So that could be interesting. Could also do a random test is maybe the winner, and like we just said, a pre-selected place getter, or let's say the first person to get 8 penalties, or first one eliminated, even though they'll be a bit cranky anyway. And actually, Kate Plummer is the National Medication Officer, isn't she, Bronwyn?
No, she's not. No,
Not anymore.
she's not. Dr. Penny Dow is. She's taken a role about 4 to 6 weeks ago.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, ever-changing world. All right, and the FEI is actually in charge of sampling at our FEI events. And again, Bronwyn knows more about this, but not all the FEI events are targeted for sampling. But then again, some are. So the riders don't know if they're going to be tested or not. All right, moving on. So a steward's role, if there is medication testing, is to politely notify the rider and collect the horse, or stay with the horse immediately on exit from the competition arena, and or as advised, politely explain the procedure to the rider or the groom, ask them for the horse's ID documents, that's CA or FEI papers. The steward must stay with the horse until it's presented at the testing box. We wouldn't want any horses swapped for any other grey horses, would we? And you maybe asked to assist if there's no groom nor an MCP steward present with the actual testing vets at the swabbing boxes, which are in a quiet area on the showgrounds. Testing procedure, basically, the horse may be presented quickly for photos. He may be hosed down or have a drink, have its tack removed and rugged. But he's not allowed to eat or to urinate or to be administered any medication until after the sampling is complete. So now it's all about welfare of the horse. So if he's agitated, actually he could be in his own box and doesn't have to go to the actual testing box if he's maybe a stallion and getting a little bit aggro. And so the vet there checks that again with a microchip reader that is that horse, and he verifies it against its papers as well and continues on. And only the official MCP sealed kits are used. After collection of urine or half an hour of waiting, whichever happens first, blood is then obtained, and urine and blood samples are taken and placed in identical bottles and tubes labelled A and B. And then all this is done in front of the person responsible or their representatives who must sign the forms. So that doesn't have to be the rider, it could be the groom or a relative or someone who signs for them.
But they must be over 18.
Must be over 18, thank you. These are old photos, but basically you get the idea that there is a set system of equipment. This is the urine sample pack and the blood sample pack there, and collection bottles, and the blue bag where the sampling kit's put in. The A and B samples are recorded and packed for postage to analytical to the laboratory. And there are only 5 of these approved FEI laboratories in the world, and Australia has one of them, and it's in Sydney. So, and then away they go, they're sampled, and the B sample remains stored and sealed and is available for confirmation if the A is positive. Okay, so we've finished now the MCP, and so again that is part of your last stewarding task. And so if you've this is the summary, last slide now. This is the summary of what you need to do next to be a national steward. You've got to be at least 18, yes. Have current EA membership. And if you're in New South Wales, you're lucky because you get to pay for Jumping New South Wales as well. You must be physically fit and have excellent communication and competency skills suitable for the duty. You have attended a National Steward Generic and Discipline Specific course. You've done that now. Hopefully you've completed the risk management theory task that is in the workbook that you have. So maybe just print off that page when you're ready to come to an actual event. Online at any time you can complete the Australian Sports Commission Community Officiating General Principles course. Online also and both of these are under education on the EA tab. Find the jumping and then stewards ORBT, which is the open rulebook test for generic plus the jumping tests. You need 80% pass for both. And then you successfully complete your practical shadow stewarding tasks under an FEI steward in your discipline within 18 months of today, let's say. Okay, all the best for your stewarding career. How about, look at the time, yes, 5 minutes to go. Okay, any questions or comments or loud applause?
I think Liz was the quickest, I think.
Go, Liz.
Sorry, I just wanted, where do we find the, I've done everything else, but just the ASC community officiating principles course, where do we find that?
You'll find that under education,
that's
and official.
in the same thing, right?
Yeah, official resources, yes.
Beautiful, thank you.
Okay. Any others? Fine. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And as I said, all the best for your stewarding careers. And please, when the shows start again around here near Sydney, in December, it's all happening. So hope to see you. Find an FEI steward. Okay. Good night.